For most of that time, I've been living in the Carlton Hotel in Tel Aviv, which is a pretty smart hotel. And I've been in the hotel which has been full of refugees, mostly now from Kiryat Shimona, who have been forced to leave their homes in northern Israel and have been distributed around the whole of the country. I've got to know for the first time, I've been to Israel many times, but I've got to know for the first time what real, honest-to-good Israelis are really like. And I've learned two things from that time, two main things, and they're both to do with elevators. You don't say lifts here, they're both to do with elevators. The first thing is that Israelis don't know how to use elevators. You have 10 people in an elevator, it comes down from the 10th floor, down to the ground. There are 20 people waiting to get in. They want to get in before you get out. And that's because, for Israelis, it's a sign of weakness to let someone come out. And the second thing about elevators, I've learned how to operate elevators on Shabbat. Most of them are pretty religious people. I'm a goy, so I make a great Shabbat goy. For those of you here who are not chosen people, what that means is that they can't operate an elevator on Shabbat, and people like me have to press the buttons for them. Many rabbis disagree. But if anyone here wants a Shabbat goy today, tomorrow, then I'm available, and I'm reassuringly expensive. But what I want to speak to you about tonight is one of the most devastating events that's occurred in the Western world, shall we say, for a very long time. And it happened yesterday. Absolutely devastating, with phenomenal consequences that most people haven't really grasped yet. And that was a decision by a despicable organization called the International Criminal Court to issue arrest warrants for Prime Minister Netanyahu and the former Defense Minister of Israel, Yoav Gallant. It's like issuing an arrest warrant in 1944 for Winston Churchill. And actually, it's more close than you think, because in my opinion, Benjamin Netanyahu is the Winston Churchill of the 21st century. He is an incredible man. I've met him many times, and a couple of weeks ago I spent 2 hours with him discussing how the war had gone and how it was going to go. And his mind and his strategic capabilities, I think, are beyond anyone else I've ever met or even read about. He's got some extraordinary challenges to face, and he's faced some incredible challenges already. He's got to deal with a very complicated war on 7 fronts, 7 battlefronts. He's got to deal with the Israeli political system, which is, I think, probably on its own is a greater challenge than most of us could ever hope to meet. He's got to deal with the United States of America, which I'm afraid to say, although it's given enormous support to Israel, has also been hugely problematic for the Prime Minister, who's had to juggle the strategic demands of Israel with the restraints placed on him by the Biden White House, which I think have been more constraining than any US administration has ever placed on Israel before in so many different ways. Last time I saw him, I say a couple of weeks ago, the guy looked like he'd just come off vacation. He's been fighting a war for more than a year, probably working about 20 hours a day. Again, an extraordinary man. But I'm not here to talk about Prime Minister Netanyahu. I'm here to talk about the evil that they're doing to him. The International Criminal Court, as I say, they have issued arrest warrants yesterday for war crimes, crimes against humanity. Quite extraordinary, an extraordinary thing. In the middle of an existential war for Israel, What does it mean? He can no longer travel. He hasn't got much time to travel now, but he can no longer travel to at least 124 countries that are members of the International Criminal Court, including the United Kingdom, I'm ashamed to say. The United Kingdom and other countries like France and Canada have said if he arrives in our countries, we will arrest him. It's shocking, beyond shocking. Not only that, but the whole country is accused of mass murder, because he couldn't do this. He couldn't have committed these alleged crimes without all of the soldiers, all of the commanders, and the backing of the citizens. So the whole country is indicted for mass murder. It's absolutely shocking, beyond any belief. But it is a distortion. It's a perversion of justice, and it's a complete distortion. I'm going to explain to you why that is now. I'm sure you can get it anywhere without the technical explanations, and I'm certainly not a lawyer, but I know enough about it to try and give a bit of clarity here in this room. And by the way, for anyone who needs more clarity and more understanding of the International Criminal Court, sitting on that table there is Nina and Mimi, who run an organisation called the Gatestone Institute. And Gatestone is a great resource to go to for many, many things, including the horrors of the International Criminal Court, because this is not the beginning. This has been going on for a long time, and I would highly commend Gatestone to you on any issue that affects our society. So, what are the issues? There are the fundamental problem with the International Criminal Court. It has distorted, it's gone through so many contortions to get Israel into the dock. The first thing to say, Israel is not a member of the International Criminal Court. It's not a signatory to the Rome Statute, which convened the court. Therefore, it's outside the ICC's jurisdiction, like the United States, not like the United Kingdom. The UK, unfortunately, signed up to the ICC. The United States had the sense not to do so. But Israel is not, apologies to someone objects to what I'm saying, probably a member of the ICC. So Israel is not a statute, is not a signatory to the statute, and can't have jurisdiction over people who are not parties to the statute, except that the alleged crimes that Israel's committed were committed on the territory of the state of Palestine. Does anyone know what the state of Palestine is? I don't. But it is not recognised by the US, it's not recognised by the UK, it's not recognised by almost all members of the International Criminal Court, but it is recognised by the court. Not only recognised, but in order to determine what crimes occur on its territory, they have to also determine what the borders are. So despite the negotiations that have been going for decades about the possibility of a two-state solution, which Caroline Glick spoke about this morning, which she quite rightly rejected, they've decided it. They know the boundaries. They figured it out. It's their decision. So you've got a state that's not a member of the ICC effectively being prosecuted by a member that's not a state, which is illegal under the court statute. So that's the first thing. A contortion, it's gymnastics, incredible. The second thing is, the court exists for one reason. It is to deal with war criminals who are from a country that's a member of the ICC that doesn't have either the capability or the will to prosecute them themselves. It's called the principle of complementarity, and it's a founding principle of the ICC. The ICC may not prosecute individuals from a state which has the capability and the will to carry out the prosecutions themselves. Israel has a proven track record. The Prime Minister of Israel today is under prosecution by the State of Israel. A former Prime Minister, Ehud Olmert, was prosecuted and sent to jail by the State of Israel. War crimes, suspected war crimes committed by Israel are investigated by Israel, and if the people that allegedly carried them out are convicted, they're sent to jail, as with the United States, as with the UK. So they're not allowed, they don't have jurisdiction over Israel in this matter, but they've taken it anyway. And then the third issue is that in order for a state that's a member to bring for charges to be brought on behalf of a state that's a member, that state has to delegate its judicial authority to the ICC. The state of Palestine, so-called, does not have that judicial authority because under the Oslo Accords it agreed that it would not prosecute Israeli citizens in any circumstances. Yet somehow they've delegated that to the ICC. So there are other distortions, but these are some of them. Where are the objections? Where are the member states saying this is invalid? The second issue. Thank you. The second issue is the actual substance of the charges. Basically speaking, the charges against Israel are that it has committed against the Prime Minister and the Defence Minister are that they ordered the commission of murder and illegal killing, unlawful killing, in Gaza and in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria. That's the first charge. The second charge is starvation. They deliberately starved the population of Gaza, both of which are war crimes. I've been into Gaza numerous times since this war began with the IDF. I've seen the way they fight. I can assure you from my own personal eyes and from everything I know about the way the IDF fights that there is no possibility that the IDF's been carrying out war crimes as a matter of policy. Of course, for individual soldiers who have killed people when they shouldn't have. That happens in every army, in every war. These are not war crimes orchestrated by the state. They might be individual war crimes, but it's very different. The measures that the IDF take in the face of the most difficult, tough situation that any army has. Gaza is the most complex battleground any army has ever fought on. I was in Gaza on one occasion. I attended a command group meeting of IDF generals and colonels who were planning an operation inside Gaza in Jabalia. 30 minutes the command group meeting took to plan an attack. An hour. Of that hour, 30 minutes were taken up trying to figure out the best way to attack a critical objective of Hamas terrorists, which was inside a school which was being used for refugees. They took 30 minutes of that entire attack planning time to try and figure out how to do it, and they came up with a fantastic solution. That is not the actions of people who are deliberately trying to kill civilians. They've dropped millions of leaflets. They've sent out millions of text messages, phone calls, voice messages in Arabic to individual locations that Hamas are sheltering in or that Hamas are operating from, which they want to hit, to warn people to go. They've got the most sophisticated method of preventing the deaths of innocent civilians in the battlefield that any other army has ever had in history. Yet, Netanyahu, through the General Staff of the IDF, is ordering war crimes. The second charge, starvation. The fact that people go hungry in war is tragic and it's unfortunate, but it is a product of war, the war that Hamas started, as are civilian casualties. I've witnessed myself in Gaza, humanitarian aid being facilitated by the IDF. They've opened 2 brand new humanitarian aid crossing points. They've built roads inside Gaza specifically to deliver aid. They've bent over backwards. They've exhausted huge resources to get aid into Gaza. In fact, no other army ever that I know of, and no other campaign that I've ever read about, has had an army that has taken so many steps to get aid to its enemy civilian population while fighting its enemy on the same battleground. It's never happened before. Yet the IDF have done it. And they've got over 1 million tons of aid into Gaza since this war began. The reason there's a shortage in some places is because the aid is seized very often by Hamas and other bandits in Gaza, stored up for themselves or sold in some cases to the civilian population when it needs it, at premium prices, free aid delivered with your tax dollars. This is not starvation. There's nothing even close to an attempt to starve the people of Gaza. I should also point out, I meant to mention it just now when I was talking about illegal killing. The death rate among Gazan civilians, terrible though it is, it amounts maybe to 20,000, maybe. We don't know because we don't have accurate estimates. Maybe to 20,000, and they've killed about 25,000 military terrorists inside Gaza. If you add to that the number of people from that 20,000 that have been killed by Hamas, and the number that died from natural causes, which is going to be about 3,000 over a one-year period based on Gazan pre-war statistics, you've got a situation where the IDF has killed fewer than one civilian for every combatant, which sounds bad, and it is bad. But if you compare it to US statistics and British statistics, in Afghanistan, 5 civilians were killed for every combatant, in Iraq 3 for every one. This, ladies and gentlemen, is not war crimes. What are the consequences of these indictments by the International so-called Criminal Court? First of all, it totally and utterly discredits the ICC. The ICC is now a mockery. It was a mockery before, but it's even more a mockery now. The ICC was set up to be a permanent replacement for the Nazi War Crimes Tribunal at Nuremberg. It's turned into a Volksgericht, which was the Nazi People's Court, the president of whom was present at the Wannsee conference. It's turned into a Jew-hating, West-hating organisation, a kangaroo court. So it's undermined itself. It's also placed enormous problems for other Western countries, because if you can do this to Israel, why can't you do it to the United States of America? Why can't you do it to the UK? Why can't you do it to any country that wants to defend itself against jihadists? It encourages terrorism. It encourages global jihad. It undermines the West. I think the designate defense secretary who spoke to us this morning said, it doesn't work if you have if you're trying to build and develop and defend a country, and you're at the same time finding everything wrong with it and criticizing it, he said, I think. It's the same with the ICC. The ICC is an instrument of undermining the West, and we should all see it as that. And how do countries like the UK, like the US, Germany, other countries who support Israel militarily in this conflict with arms and other technology, where do they stand in this indictment? What's their position? I think that's something that we will undoubtedly find out. Other consequences of what they've done. The ICC is part of the UN. Effectively, it's part of the UN. It's like the International Court of Justice. The International Court of Justice, as you know, has accused and is entertaining an obscene allegation by South Africa against Israel of genocide. That is, it may not have come to the same point as the ICC has yet, but it's equally obscene. So we're facing, in the ICC and the ICJ, an assault on our democracies, an assault on Western powers. Who has welcomed the ICC's decision? Iran, for a start. Hamas also has welcomed it. Many other countries have welcomed it, particularly the enemies of the West. What should we do about it? Now is not the time, ladies and gentlemen, for weakness. Now is the time for tough guys to act, and thank goodness we've got a tough guy about to come into the White House. Speaking of tough guys, I want to mention the most dangerous man in this room, who is sitting here on this table, Dr. Bob Shillman. Who himself, I just saw a picture earlier on of himself inside Gaza as well, so he's certainly a tough guy. But what do we need to do? President Trump, as soon as he gains office, needs to sanction the International Criminal Court. He needs to target He needs to target the judges who made this ruling. He needs to target the chief prosecutor of the ICC, Karim Khan, a British barrister. And by the way, one thing I didn't mention is that Karim Khan, and this is an interesting point, just a few days before the decision was taken by Karim Khan to apply for arrest warrants against the Prime Minister and Defence Minister of Israel, he was accused of serious sexual misconduct in relation to a female staff member at the ICC. Now, I'm not making any allegations against him. I don't know if this is recorded or not, but I'm not making any direct allegations against him. But what a coincidence. Just a few days later, there was no warning in advance this was going to happen. It just happened. His decision to apply for the arrest warrants. Was it deflection from the allegations being made against him, which he denies? Was it a way then of going on to say, which he has now said, that the allegations were trumped up by Israel against him? I leave that with you to draw your own conclusions about that chief prosecutor of the ICC. He needs to be sanctioned. He needs to be banned from coming into the United States. He needs to have his assets frozen along with the judges sitting on the panel. What else? Those countries that have supported the ICC case, for example, Turkey, South Africa, who have directly, and many others who have directly contributed evidence, directly supported the ICC case, they need to suffer as well at the hands of President Trump. And not only that, but countries like my own, which have said they will arrest Netanyahu if he comes to their country. They need to suffer as well. I hate to say it about my own country. Things like trade deals. Do we want a trade deal with the UK? We want it. I would be very serious in my reservations if I was President Trump, because this is not just an attack on Israel. Doesn't just undermine Israeli security, it undermines the entire Western security, including US interests. I just want to finish off. Caroline Glick this morning said, yeah, this Caroline, she's over here, if you want to give her a... one of the greatest defenders of Israel and the West. Caroline Glick said this morning that Israel is winning in Gaza and in Lebanon. And it's absolutely right. Israel is certainly winning an incredible war in Gaza and Lebanon. They've devastated Hamas to the point that Hamas is barely able to operate, is still able to operate, but not for much longer. They've decimated Hezbollah to the point where I would say Hezbollah is not on the verge of collapse. It could be if the war goes on, but they've certainly seriously decimated Hezbollah, which was the most powerful terrorist organization in the world until a few weeks ago. So Israel's winning. But this is also a war of, it's also a political war. It's not just a war in the battlefields. And I often speak to, again, the designate defense secretary said this morning that we should focus on supporting, educating, and preparing the youngest generations of Americans. And he's absolutely right. And I very often speak to high school students in the USA and university students here in the USA. And by the way, while I'm on that subject, there's another lady sitting over here called Marsha Markalova, who is the president of an incredible organization called Club, you'd call it Club Z, but I can't say Z being British, so I call it Club Z, which prepares young high school students. It's like a military organization. They train them for the fight they're going to face when they get to university. Jewish high school students prepared to fight, and they've been phenomenally successful. And if you don't know about Club Z, I suggest you check it out and go and see Marsha maybe, because she needs your support, I think, as well as we need hers. But one thing I always say to these students is that they shouldn't see supporting Israel and standing up for Israel as a terrible burden that they have to bear, that they have no choice but to bear. They should see it as an honour and a privilege to stand up for Israel and stand up for the fight against their people, their families, their communities. And as I say to them, in years to come, they will be able to be proud that they helped in this terrible time for Israel. They helped to protect the Jewish state. And ladies and gentlemen, I heard last week I think it was, from the mayor of Beersheba, who read out a last letter from a 21-year-old IDF soldier from Beersheba who'd been killed a couple of days before. And he said to his final letter to his family, "Do not be sad. It has been an honour for me to die fighting for the state of Israel." If he can say that, ladies and gentlemen, all of us can join that fight. Thank you very much indeed.